In this last episode of the amazing Beach Boy story, we're going to look at the fights that they had, the tragedies that they had, the surprising release of the music from Smile, their last album as a group together, and where Brian and Mike Love are now. Are you ready? Let's drop the needle. The infighting in the band just continued, and now it became two groups. You had Dennis and Carl, the Wilson brothers, on one side, and Al Jardine and Mike Love on the other side. Now, they renegotiated a recording contract with CBS Records, and amazingly, Mike Love and Al Jardine took control of the group. The two of them decide that the next album will be called MIU, which was the Maharishi International University, all about meditation and stuff. And that's the album, MIU album. And it is considered the worst Beach Boy album ever. The next year they try again with an album called LA Light Album. It's not going so well. And Brian convinces them to bring Bruce Johnston back to produce the album, but even Bruce can't put magic in it. It barely hits 100 on the charts, and it's a failure. You certainly can't say that the Beach Boys are ever going to give up. After the failure of LA Light Album, they decide they're going to record their 24th studio album. And Brian is more involved, and they bring Bruce Johnston back again to produce, and the album is called Keeping the Summer Alive. Besides the title song, Keeping the Summer Alive, which is a great song, there's Oh Darlin' and I Like Santa Ana Winds. In 1981, Carl Wilson leaves the Beach Boys, saying they've just become a nostalgic act and he's not going to be a Las Vegas-style entertainer. Just about a year later, though, he does return to the fold. In 1982, with Brian once again way out of control, Eugene Landy comes back into the fold. And it appears that he's successful this time. Brian's weight drops from over 300 pounds to 185. But during the same time, brother Dennis Wilson is having a very hard time. His personal life is in shambles. His finances are in disarray. He's lost his voice, so he can't sing. He can't play drums anymore. He's heavily into alcohol and drugs, and he's basically becoming homeless. And then, in December of the year, the only Beach Boy who ever surfed drowns. The rest of the band, under the direction of Mike Love, continues to tour, and in 1985, they released the album The Beach Boys, which is the first album without Dennis Wilson. And Dr. Eugene Landy says he is responsible and tries to take credit for the album. Now, I have to tell you, by this point, I was getting basically pretty fed up with the drama behind the Beach Boys and their lackluster musical performance, and I have never ever listened to this record. Meanwhile, the label keeps releasing greatest hits and compilations to keep something out there in front of the public. But how many times can you rebuy the same material just repackaged? In 1989, the band releases their 26th studio album called Cruisin'. Now, the critics hated it, but it actually sold very well. The album was packaged to include songs that were featured in films. There was a hit, Kokomo, from the film Cocktail, which went to #1. Still Cruisin', which was used in Lethal Weapon 2, I Get Around from Good Morning Vietnam, and California Girls from Soul Man. Brian and Mike Love are suing each other over the direction of the band and song credits. But in 1992, an album is released called Summer in Paradise. But interestingly, it is the only Beach Boy album not to include any new material from Brian Wilson. It's a failure. The touring part of the Beach Boys had become kind of an American tradition. They appeared at the Washington Monument. They appeared at the White House. They were kind of known as America's band. And so in 1996, they had this great idea that they would release an album where it would be them collaborating with country music stars, which would make them even more mainstream, apparently. The album was called Stars and Stripes Volume 1. It's a disaster. Now, they had actually planned a Volume 2 album, but it never came to fruition. Unfortunately, the disastrous Stars and Stripes Volume 1 was the last album that Carl Wilson ever played on. On February 6, 1998, Carl Wilson died of lung and brain cancer, and he was 51 years old. Meanwhile, Mike Love continues to tour with some version of a band that he's calling the Beach Boys. And then in 2004, no one expected this, but Brian Wilson decides to record a new version of what would have been Smile. And he releases the album Brian Wilson Presents Smile. So now for the first time you get to hear what Smile could have been. And it is an amazing experience. Seeing this success in 2011, Capitol decides to release a box set which is called the Smile Sessions, which is kind of an official release of Smile. Now, there are some differences between the two releases. The Capitol Smile Sessions is a compilation, a reconstruction of what the album could have been, where Brian's is the original composer recreating what that album would have been. I like Brian's version way better. Great music that really would have been cool if it would have come out at the time. In 2012, the Beach Boys released an album called That's Why God Made the Radio. And it's a big hit. Now, this is the first album without Carl Wilson. So they bring back their old friend and original member, David Marks. The album is a hit. I like That's Why God Made the Radio, Spring Vacation, and the great four-song closing of Strange World, From There to Back Again, Pacific Coast Highway, and Summer's Gone. For the last Beach Boy album recorded, it's a good one. The pandemic essentially ended the touring, but Mike Love and a version of the Beach Boys are set to tour again, and hopefully so is Brian Wilson. And the music never ends. They started out harmonizing in their bedroom, singing about surfing, cars, and girls. And in my opinion, that's before they even got creative. They became a formidable live act, and Brian came into his own as a force of nature in the studio. In my opinion, they were one of 4 of the top musical acts in the late 60s, early 70s. You got the Beach Boys, you got Bob Dylan, you got the Beatles, and you got the Rolling Stones. What an amazing time to be alive. Now, as usual, I've created a playlist on Spotify. Here is the link to it so you can listen to some of the songs that I talked about. And that's my take on the Beach Boys. What an amazing story. What amazing talent. What amazing songs. If you like this look at the Beach Boys, leave me in the comments below other classic rock artists that you'd like me to delve into in this kind of detail. It'd be fun. Thanks for watching, and keep a rockin'. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.